Hello and welcome to the Year We Started podcast. It's a podcast born Phoenix-like from blah, blah, blah. I'm your co-host, Jeff.
Wow, from blah, blah, blah. I'm your other co-host, Nick.
And this is
I am.
podcast something, something, far apart, blah, blah, blah. Nick, you have something to talk to me about.
I think you're just waiting for an apology. Jeff, I want to apologize. I want to let you know that I think sometimes I'm not a very good co-host for you, man.
You know what?
I want to apologize.
Okay,
Yeah.
I accept your apology. I will now give this podcast my entire, I'm going to give it my all. Here we go. Hello and welcome to the Year We Started podcast. It's a podcast born Phoenix-like from the ashes of last year's podcast, regardless of the energy that my co-host brings. I am your co-host, Jeff.
I'm your other co-host, Nick.
And this is our very energetic, very into it podcast. We're a couple friends, half a continent apart, that would really, really, really like to come together and talk about some of the things that are fun and interesting to us. Nick, you have something to talk to us about? Please go.
I do. Dude, I want to apologize. I feel like I was listening to last week's podcast, and you were telling a story. And it was a story that I enjoyed, and I was like, yeah, you were telling the story about when you were a kid and you came back from being hurt while playing and you came back from playing from having a broken arm, playing basketball, and the first thing you did was make like three threes in a row, right out the gate. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, it's such a great story, and I was like so happy for you. And then the podcast Nick that I was listening to didn't say anything. And I was like, podcast Nick, why aren't you saying anything? And I think it's the reason I bring all this up is not just to apologize, it's not to stroke your ego, but it's to kind of it's kind of interesting to me that you have to change how you interact depending on your medium. And I know that that's probably very obvious to everybody during the pandemic here, as everybody's on Zoom calls 40 times a week instead of doing their normal life. But I'm pretty sure that in normal real life, the reason that I didn't say anything is that in normal conversation, if you or I were at a table or in a room or a bar or something and talking, and you told the story, I would have just been smiling and softly laughing and just nodding along. Do you know what I mean? But instead, over audio, I'm like this.
So, Nick, you've reminded... Okay, if you are a Patreon supporter, and I can never give more of a plug now than any other time, I have struggled to remember a thing that I've tried to tell Nick for the past 1 hour of us recording, I don't know, probably 20 minutes of audio, but it's been a hot minute. Nick, the thing that I have meant to tell you was how frustrated I am listening to myself try to explain any concept or react to any concept in post. Because I'm not the sort of person, whatever, my voice is stupid, I'm fine, whatever, I don't give a frick.
We've moved on. Everybody hates their own voice in recording. Yeah,
it legitimately does not bother me.
I'm pretty sure I've had a nasally congested nose in every recording of all time.
Yeah, exactly. I genuinely, lots of people talk about how that is just a really hard hurdle for them to get over. I don't, whatever, it doesn't bother me. What bothers me is last Patreon episode where I was talking about how there's different positions in basketball that are outside the traditional positions of basketball, and I feel it's not necessarily fair to try to say that somebody is the greatest of all time, and there's so many different ways that positions can be played. Hearing me try my darndest to give a coherent explanation of my feelings in post was absolutely excruciating. I could not, I would have hit myself. How did you not yell at me midway through explaining for the fourth time incoherently that this was a thing that I thought, it was so bad, Nick, and I can't stand that. How could I do such a bad job explaining it? Not once, not twice, probably not even thrice. I had to switch over to the second hand the number of times I talked about how bad that was. How poorly I talked about that. I genuinely do believe the thing I was trying to say.
I'm sure that in actuality, if you're saying it's this repetitive, I'm sure in actuality it was, but you don't feel repetitive in the moment, and I think that's more important to the flow of the conversation. You don't feel like you're just telling me over and over. But seriously, though, this restaurant's the best. I don't get it.
Let me explain it more poorly to you.
Let me try again with a similar but identical analogy.
Or slightly worse. That is legitimately how I felt. So anyway,
Was you really going backwards? I've felt that way. That's rough.
I really tried to portray what I thought in those last Patreon episode. I genuinely could not have done a poorer job. The more I tried, it was just. That's why I literally titled, I think, the episode, I should just let Nick talk about basketball, because I literally felt like I did so bad. It was so cringy to listen to. I just need to let it go.
Sorry.
It has to be something that you talk about.
I'm sorry. That is rough. So the takeaway for this is that I think that a lot of us are self-critical and introspective, but I don't think we often are about our communication methods and our communication habits. And this podcast has been really good for me with that. I want to be a better listener, but I also need to be a better listener. Sometimes I have to actually say things instead of just nodding along, especially when we're on a freaking audio call. I think that I made you taper off and kind of lose your momentum on the story because I just wasn't expressing the hype with you. And and I don't just mean that to oh, I got to play it up so Jeff feels better. But I have to not be a silent listener to you. You can't tell me a story that you're expecting a reaction from and for me to just be freaking silent.
Well, and it's one of those things where normally it's we're both equally we're equally into our own thoughts that it actually doesn't matter. It offsets to some degree. We can be super weird to each other in a normal conversation. But when you are listening to it after it's happened, you're like, oh man, I could not have been any more self-absorbed in my thoughts than I was. I did not only in the example of that I gave of the last Patreon recording, but I I have been multiple times in editing this podcast. I've had to cut out parts of this show where it was man, that was an okay bit, but the most one-sided, uninvolved either one of us were. It's just man, it's so hard to think about the balance between being interested in the thing that is being told to you and trying to think of the next interesting thing to say. It's not as easy and not as intuitive as what you'd think.
And I appreciate that you fumble through it all with me because I feel like a big jerk who doesn't listen well.
Okay, I have a couple intro topics, and you wanted to steal the first one, but I still want to get my couple in too.
Yeah,
so
do it.
We're going to do a couple more intro topics. So, Nick, let's start with this one. How do you feel you are with estimating time, specifically how long it's going to take it to do a particular thing?
Very poor. And can I just tell you that beforehand that you are the best ever about estimating time to get to a location. I don't know if you're the best at estimating how long it will take you to do something, but I have never met anyone in my life who is more specific. I will get texts from you that are I'll be home in 12 minutes. And it's what do you, 12? What? And I appreciate the hell out of them.
Yeah,
really do.
No, I'm very good at estimating the time it's going to take me to get somewhere. I can't take the credit for that though, because as I've mentioned in prior podcasts, I am terrible at getting places, and so it's really easy to understand how far or how long it's going to take you to get someplace when your phone is telling you exactly to the minute how long it's going to get somewhere.
I see.
Nick, I am very, very bad at estimating how long it's going to take me to get a task done. Do you want to take a stab at what direction I am bad at that? Really, spoiler alert! It's the one where I take way longer than my wife expects me to.
Yeah. Well,
not to tie this too specifically to people that
I guess
matters to.
The only time that it's really a problem is if it's way longer, right? I don't know why I hesitated there. I don't know why my brain just seized up, but yeah, it's only a problem.
Man, yeah, I hate when I constantly get stuff done way faster than what people expect.
I mowed the lawn in 5 minutes. It was crazy. Anyways, I just sat around on my phone for an hour after that.
I don't know what it is though, Nick, because I genuinely think of myself as a rational, logical person who thinks through things, and I try to think about, but it's not even a guessing on time. It's also estimating how much I can get done in a week at work or personal life. I'm incapable of understanding how long something is actually going to take me, even though I know that about myself. Like, I can think to myself, like, okay, I think that getting this particular project done outdoors is going to take me, I'd say, I don't know, 4 hours. So I know that I normally would say 4 hours. So I'm going to say it's going to take me 12 hours. It's going to take me all weekend. And invariably, if I go to that extent, it's going to take me 3 weeks. Like, and I don't understand how that is possible. Like, how am I so bad? And like, it's like, if it was like something that I was unfamiliar with, but I can't even give that as an excuse. Like, it's just going to take way longer than I possibly can imagine, and I'm not capable of adjusting my point of view for how long things take.
Yeah,
what is wrong with
not
me, Nick?
sure. That's very confusing to me, to be honest with you. I don't know the answer for what's wrong.
Are you that way, or are you good at estimating?
Not to that extreme by any means, but yeah, 100%. I feel like my issue is that I'm easily distractible, and then I always look at the estimate like I'm gonna be perfectly on top of whatever I'm doing, and like that's just best case scenario. Do you know what I mean? Like, if it would take me, I don't know, say it would take me like 30 minutes to take my dog on a walk, right? In like a best case scenario where I'm like, I'm gonna take him this far, so it's gonna be a 30-minute walk for the dog. That's like assuming that I'm not going to send like 5 texts to random people on the way out the door, or like I'm not going to like get distracted by a YouTube video before I like go to walk him,
or a
like
podcast
or a podcast or whatever. And that, you know, and also assuming that my dog's not going to be like a jerk and just sniff and bark at everything or whatever, and like
or
make a
pee on another dog or whatever.
Right, as they do, as dogs do every time, all the time.
Stop
just normal.
moving whatever that is that made that noise. Throw it across the room. That's our editor.
Oh, that's your editor? Okay. Yeah. It's gone. Anyways, like, because I mean, the dog example is maybe not the best one, but it's basically just like, if you give me a task, whatever I tell you is the best possible case scenario, and I will always say that best case scenario. I won't say like, oh, okay, well, give me 45 to walk the dog. Yeah. No. It's 30 minutes to walk the dog. It's fine.
What I have gotten to, though, in my wiser years, as a spouse to a person who doesn't appreciate my inability,
somebody who may not ever reach wiser years. What's that like? Is it cool? Or sorry,
lots of it's really cool. One of the things that I've learned is to embrace my badness at estimating time, and the hilarious thing about it is, I've gotten to the point where I've gotten really comfortable with my wife, where I tell her what I consider to be, in my own brain, which is often wrong, to be the most ridiculous option available. Like, oh, I think I'm going to be done in like 20 minutes, so I'm going to say I'll be done in a couple hours. And
then you're usually right.
And now I'm right. But it's so weird because every time I do it, Nick, and I've gotten to this point, this is probably like 4 years that I've gotten good at this. And like every time I do it, I feel like I'm saying the most ridiculous thing. But
it's right.
I tell you what, it comes in absolutely clutch, because like it's not like either one of us necessarily is like planning on a particular thing as a thing that we're going to be, upset or mad about or happy about or whatever. It's just like Katie wants to know what happened, like, is what the plan is, because like we have kids and things and plans and such.
Yep.
So if things go to plan, like, it's no big deal. If things don't go to plan, that means that, like, I have to adjust and do whatever. So I just go way, way, way outside of whatever I think is normal, and it is always something I think is ridiculous, but ends up being very close to what actually happens. And I don't understand why or how. Like, I don't know what's broken inside of me that's incapable of guessing properly, but I have to guess completely outside of what I think is reality, and that is actually how it works out, and I don't understand.
I understand. It's that when you tell yourself that number that's like ridiculous, you've now given yourself that much time to work on it, and you don't like use up the time accordingly. Do you know what I mean? I'm not trying to throw shade at you here. That is not my intention.
No. What do you mean? What do you mean?
Okay, so like, if you have an hour and a half to get something done, and it's like a task, then you will take an hour and a half to get that done because you aren't pressured into getting it. Do you know what I mean? Like, the pressure of getting it done in a certain amount of time if you say you have a task that, like you said, it takes 20 minutes, and you tell your wife an hour and a half because you want to give yourself room for something to go wrong and for you to get distracted and whatever else, right?
Mm-hmm.
You'll find more reasons to get distracted. You'll feel less pressured 30 minutes in, and so you'll pull out your phone more, or you'll respond to that text more, or give that text more thought, or whatever. And it's the same thing. If you'd said an hour instead, you'd get it done in an hour, because at 40 minutes you'd be like, I gotta put the phone down. I gotta close this tab of YouTube or whatever.
No. Okay, so I we don't do this a lot, Nick. I disagree. I genuinely think
you're just not as much of a jerk as I am. Got it. Because
yeah,
no,
for sure. Yeah, that may be you. Hey, Jen, can you stop listening for a second?
Okay.
Just if you can. If you could, let's see. Let me look at the timestamp. If you can fast forward 25 minutes.
Can you fast forward from a couple minutes ago, though, before I said all that stuff? Damn.
Gosh dang it. But no, like legitimately, like I'm not even talking about the distracted thing. Like if I don't want to use work because work's not a fun example. If I have to go edit this podcast, let's use that. I feel like most people can relate to editing podcasts.
Everybody edits podcasts.
Everybody, even you, Nick, who definitely knows all about that. But no.
Well, I actually edit my other podcast a lot, Jeff. I put in a lot of work for that one.
We'll plug it at the end. The time that I expect it to take for me to edit this podcast is always significantly more than I guess. And I'm not going to go down here. And unlike what I said last episode, I delayed a lot of the podcast editing because I played a ton of chess. It's not like I go down here, play chess, and then I edit the podcast, and that's why I'm wrong. I'm just overly optimistic about how much I can get done in a given amount of time. And I have to guess way, way, way longer than I think is actually applicable. Even if I'm 100% focused on achieving the task, I'm just broken in the sense that I don't understand how to estimate time.
I guess it's fair.
I'm so optimistic.
I think for me, it's probably a combination of what I said about being distractible and like not feeling the pressure,
Jim,
and then also
I agree.
No.
Jim.
Like I'm not just I like genuinely. I think there's an element of like. Just we all want to envision ourselves. I don't know if like that's not fair. Maybe for me, I want to envision myself as this productive person who gets a lot of stuff done in XYZ time. So I don't know, but I hear you.
Yeah. Anyways, random topic. It's an intro topic, Nick. We don't have to worry too much about it. I don't do that.
Well,
also,
I found it fun. So
yeah. I'm having really fun thinking about all the mouse clicks I'm gonna have to click out or edit out of this podcast.
I'm talking while oh man, I'm doing you a favor today.
Clicking your mouse while you talk.
What are you talking about? What's going on?
Nick, I'm going to put silent buttons underneath your chair arms where you just feel like you can click those all day, and that'll be like your OCD clicking thing that you can do.
That is completely fair. That is completely
okay.
fair.
Moving on to our third intro topic. We are now, how far are we in?
4 hours, 5 hours.
4 hours.
You got to give yourself 4 or 5 hours to get it done.
Gosh dang it. Okay. Nick, I got to guest on a particular podcast. It was the Pigskin Party podcast. We may have Brian McFadden come guest with us at some point.
We should.
We actually were texting before this. He has a couple very interesting ideas. He very much liked our Wayne Gretzky episode and our Michael Jordan episode. And I would love to hear somebody smarter than us talk about good sports people. So we might bring him on at some point.
There's you know people smarter than me.
Nick, have you met us at the bars?
Fair. I can only keep that voice for a straight voice for a couple of seconds. The face, I couldn't even. It would be even worse with a straight face. That's all I'm saying.
I just saw your message. I hate you so much. To our listeners at home, Nick has his silent mouse out that you, dear Patreon listeners, have paid for, so I don't have to edit this out. No, I'm so glad to hear that, Nick. I'm so proud of you for realizing how you can make my life a little bit easier. But no,
You're
Nick,
welcome.
one of the things that Brian and the Pigskin Party podcast talk about is different things every week. but specifically, most recently, one of my favorite episodes of their entire show, they talked about Parks and Rec versus The Office and just thoughts in general. I have literally no idea what your thoughts are on either of those two shows.
I love both those shows.
Love both. Okay.
I will say I think I'm much more partial to Parks and Rec, but I think I kind of missed the wave of The Office. I think The Office started when I was a teenager, like a relatively young teenager, and so like the office environment of it didn't really resonate. Went back and watched it as an adult and loved it, but yeah.
Okay, so Nick, after the show, I'm going to link you to the particular episode of the Pigskin Party podcast that I feel like you would be interested in hearing. I need
to listen to them anyways. I actually like the idea of that podcast, even if I don't like football. I
was going to say, young man,
don't follow
you
football.
Watch your mouth.
I'm so sorry. I apologize. I take it all back. Continue. Go ahead.
No, it's a good time, good people. But so Brian, the host over there in their Flavor of the Week episode where they talk about just kind of whatever, mentioned that he was a big Office fan and couldn't really get into Parks and Rec after the first season. He gave up to it like mid first season, to which my response to that was absolutely aghast that you would give up on Parks and Rec after the first season. Not that I don't understand it, like I definitely get it, but in my opinion, Nick, I don't like the first season is not representative at all
of anything else. The tone changes drastically. Leslie changes drastically. It's not. I completely agree with you that you should drop it then, but also it is the most understandable thing because it is not the same show at all, right?
No, like it really isn't. And like in the same sense that I don't think that the first season of The Office is the same as the rest of the season, or rest of the season as the rest of the show. Like there is so much development that happens, but I think it is even more prominent in Parks and Rec. Actually, in my opinion, it doesn't really hit its stride until season 3. But I agree with you, Nick. I think I feel a higher level of attachment to Parks and Rec. I think it's one of the best TV shows ever made, especially from a comedy standpoint. Obviously, if you're more into other genres, you can make an argument there, but like I enjoyed it so much as it was live, and
completely.
Like there are so many lines that I think are some of the best lines ever. But it's one of those things where like the build up to those characters are what make that so great, and I don't think that really happens until the second and third season and thereafter.
I agree, and I also think that like the specific thing for me that I don't think. So the first season, and I assume season 3 is when the kind of the fuller cast is kind of introduced, right?
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
So, but I also think that the initial cast is the direction of those characters and the writing for those characters of Leslie and God, I should really know
that one guy,
Chris, not Chris, Andy, played by Chris Pratt. Sorry, that's why I'm confused. But the direction of Amy and Andy in the first season is like not even remotely what their direction is in any other part of so to me it's like almost it's like the most understandable thing to not really like that, because I thought that it was a lot drier and just not the same tone, because the rest of the series, Leslie's like incredibly competent and just like earnest and eager, and that's her thing, as opposed to awkward and not as competent. And Andy goes from just being a jerk deadbeat to being just like a goofball, right? Like so it's like different shows almost because of how different the characters are, and the plot of the show is almost nothing, right? Like there's stories throughout.
Sure,
but you're not following because it's like, oh, I really got to find out who killed so and so. You're following because, like, I don't know, Leslie's funny, and so is Andy, and so is Ann Perkins, and whatever,
For me, like I loved all of everything season 3 and thereafter. Like I loved, but I think that. I mean, obviously, Chris Pratt proved himself and has gone on to do very many popular things.
Has he gotten popular?
Yeah, it's kind of caught on a little bit. But him and I think Nick Offerman was absolutely freaking amazing. And like the whole,
so do I.
Like, oh man, it was such a good experience watching them as that was unfolding. And I I am so jealous of anybody who has not watched that show who likes that sort of thing. Like,
Because they get to go experience it. Those jerks.
Exactly. And I've been, like you've mentioned, I need to go watch Ozark, which I think you corrected me incorrectly on our Patreon episode. It's definitely Ozark, not Ozarks with plural, but.
So I corrected you, and then I instantly regretted it because I felt like I was being one of those people who was like just like pointlessly correcting because it was a pointless thing to correct you on.
And you were
and then
wrong.
I instantly, I think I even said it. I'm like, I don't even know if that's right. That doesn't even sound right now that I say it. Anyways, I'm the worst.
Yep. Shame on you. Anyways,
let me give you one last thing on the Parks and Rec front, and none of this is to say anything bad about the Office, which I love too. Parks and Rec has the best cameo of any actor or any celebrity ever in Chris Bosch's episode. Do you remember this?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Chris Bosch is a high school basketball player for the stupid, for our listeners who didn't watch it.
Is that
Chris
one
Bosch,
of the Death Shrimp episodes, or is it something
No,
different?
it's not the Deathless Shrimp episode. The Deathless Shrimp episodes are really good too. But so, okay, guys. So for all our listeners that don't know this show or don't remember this or whatever, Chris Bosch is a 7 foot tall-ish NBA player, and they have an episode where the local high school is playing against their rival town, and the rival town is like the most wealthy, stuck up place of all time, and they're like just so lucky and like, oh yes, on our side of the town border we have all these amazing natural resources and all that crap, right? So they switch over to they briefly show a high school basketball game where 7 foot tall Chris Bosch dunks on a kid, and then Leslie, I think, is like, is that kid even in high school? And he dunks on the kid, and he turns to the other kid, and he's like, and I'm better at clarinet than you, Lawrence. It's the best. I don't think I have it exactly right, but whatever it is, it's the best trash talk. And there's a single line of trash talk you could ever say to somebody is you dunk on them and you tell them they're not even good at clarinet.
Oh, dude, I'm actually looking at the list of guest stars on Parks and Rec, and the cameos are pretty good. I mean,
They're all over.
Yeah, you have Michelle Obama, you have Kristen Bell, you have John Hamm.
Oh yeah, I think I remember that.
Yeah, I'm trying to look through some of these that I actually remember. Yeah, Jonathan Banks, which is the guy off of Breaking Bad.
I don't remember who Jonathan Banks is.
I don't remember. Okay, apparently Andy Samberg was on this. I don't remember him at all.
How did I miss that?
I don't know. Apparently we need to watch Parks and Rec more.
Oh wait! Is Andy Samberg one of the sleazy radio guys?
I don't think so.
I think because there's like two sleazy radio guys, and one of them's the douche, and the other one I can't remember the other one's name. And I think that one of the douche is around more, but isn't Andy Samberg. But maybe the other one is.
By the way, speaking of Andy Samberg and TV shows, have you watched Brooklyn Nine-Nine?
I haven't. I should.
Okay, Nick, you need to watch Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and anybody else listening, you need to watch Brooklyn Nine-Nine. I put Parks and Rec above it, but only slightly, barely. Okay. I genuinely think like if you're just looking for completely lighthearted comedy that is just, I'm gonna send you a link. I'm gonna put something in our Discord so I remember to do it.
Okay, I am loving this conversation. We could talk about this for a long time, but I gotta tell you, I don't think that our whole episode should just be us talking about
No, it should. All right, moving on. Nick, here we go.
I do love it, though. I really do.
Nope, it's good. And who knows? Maybe we will have cut some of that. Okay, Nick, we need to talk about other things that are not this. Nick, I would like to talk about the thing that I'm scrolling down to right now. You've hurt yourself, Nick. What have you done?
I have two mini this week I hurt myself ones, and I just want to let everyone know that I am just a totally functional adult, just completely capable of taking care of myself. So this week, I told you I was a little under the weather, and so on Monday, I told you in the Patreon one that I was a little under the weather.
It was COVID.
Not COVID. Got tested, not COVID. But so Monday I was like really wiped out, and so I took a nap on my couch, which I never take naps, and I'm the worst at napping. And I took a nap on my couch, and when I woke up, my my wrist was underneath my ribs, and I was like completely just sleeping on my wrist, and my wrist was like completely jammed, and I didn't want to be able to rotate it around. Like I couldn't get full range of motion from napping on my wrist. I'm an adult. I pay bills.
Oh man, I'm so proud of you.
And then the other one is so it was fine after like 2 days. It was actually kind of fine after like no time, but like it was a pain in my butt for the next 2 days. And then last night I went and saw my sister.
I thought you said it was a wrist thing.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it was a pain in my wrist. That's the phrase.
Yeah, thank you.
You're a butt.
You're a wrist.
And so yesterday I went and saw my sister and her 2-year-old son, 2.5-year-old son. And Jeff, you might know that two-year-old boys like to run around and play. And I know this. And I know that a 2-year-old weighs, I don't know, I think he weighs like 40 pounds or something. Like in that general vicinity. It could be 30 or something. I wouldn't be surprised. But I've always just like thrown him around and like, played with him, like just picked him up and throw him all the time and crap. But he like is running like kind of full tilt, full sprint now. And like I went to like grab him as he was running away from me. Like he was like running away from me as I would like pick him up and throw him up. And I grabbed him with one arm while he was running full speed. And it's like, I think I like hyperextended my arm. It's fine, but like I felt like it didn't pop out. There was no pop.
Oh, thank goodness.
I think he just got to the point where he's just a little too big and a little too fast, and I'm like just dumb and like I was gonna throw my little nephew around, and he just like full sprint ran and like I got my hand on him and just hyperextended my arm or something. It just feels a little sore and like a little stiff and awkward now, and I'm like, dude, how am I the old guy who's getting hurt by playing with my nephew?
Yep. So I'll tell you how this goes, Nick, because there's two things that are happening, and they are counter effects, both not in your favor. One, as a person with a 4.5-year-old boy, they get bigger and heavier and more inertia. Not in your favor for that sort of thing.
And I can still pick him up and throw him around and stuff. He's still small, but it's like I just got him at the wrong angle and let him go. And,
I'm telling you, Nick, you're going to learn more and more about kinetic energy.
It's an interesting one, huh?
Yeah, there's that. And then also, yeah, you're just going to start getting older and older to the extent that you start to wonder, like, oh, man, I used to think my parents were super old. Like I remember, Nick, when my dad turned 40, and I thought he was so freaking old, and like I can still see that, and it's far enough away that I can not say that it's going to happen anytime in the next few years. But Nick, there's going to be a time where I have to start coming to grips with the fact that I'm going to be 40 years old, and I used to think that was like, basically ancient.
Those are the people who are going to retire because their brains don't work anymore. Exactly. I understand. Body's breaking down on them.
I'm not facing that reality quite yet, but it's on the horizon. So, and I don't think that very much bodes well for our tendons' ability to catch laterally running 40-pound weights. I don't think it works that way. I
don't think it works that way either. And I really appreciate that you turned my this week I hurt myself into a chance to rub into my face how old I am. I'll let you know that I'll
have you know, Nick, I will always be older than you.
That's true.
Till the day I die, plus 4 years or whatever, 3 years.
That's math. That's just math. I just want to let you know that I found my first gray beard hair, and Jen laughed at me a lot when she found it.
Oh my gosh. I can't listen to this.
But it's okay.
Nick,
Jeff,
Nick,
it's fine.
We're going to be okay. You've seen me. Have you seen my hair? Have you seen my hair?
Yeah, I have. I have seen your hair.
And how is it, Nick?
It's the same color as it's always been in my mind.
Nick.
There's some grays in there, aren't there?
Nick, I'm okay. You tell your
Jeff,
story.
It's okay.
You tell your story. I'm gonna send you a picture
Vince
of my
Carter
hair.
can do a 360 dunk at 43, so I'm sure at 43 I will also be able to do a 360 dunk, and that's all I have to say on the subject. So
just keep talking.
God.
I'm sending you a picture. Go ahead, keep talking.
Other athletes, age gracefully because they take care of their bodies like an athlete, as opposed to like a chump who just skates through life and doesn't think about it until he's like 27 or something. And talking. Jeff's gonna cut all this anyways.
Yeah, I'm gonna cut. No, I'm gonna cut none of that. I think you did a great job. This is actually very, very blurry, but I feel like you can kind of get the idea. Oh man, this is so bad.
I want to let you know that this is our best podcast in terms of like having a focused topic. We're just like rambling about nothing. I really like
I'll focus this in. Nick,
there's gray. There's gray in there, Jeffrey.
I'm like 30% gray. So I don't want to hear it about your.
I mean, that's fair. It's wildly different. I think it happens like all at once. My dad went like almost completely white, or like that's not right. Almost completely gray in like a year. He went from like pretty brown to like completely gray in like a year.
My grandpa was completely gray at 22.
Dude, yeah.
Like, which is just crazy. Okay, we can do one good solid ending topic here. Nick, for our last good, solid ending, very focused topic here, I would like to talk about birds. Nick, before I get into birds, do you feel any strong feelings about birds?
Oh, I have some very, very strong political leanings on birds. And
no, I didn't say political leanings.
Yeah, you asked how I felt. I got feelings. I need to know where you stand before I can condemn you, though.
Is this real?
No. What? No. You asked me how I felt about birds. I don't know what to say to that. What do you?
I don't know.
Do you ask
Look, it's a wild world. Everybody has opinions about everything,
folks,
Nick. Who knows?
Before we go any further, can we go around the room and everybody introduce themselves and give me your feelings on birds?
Oh, man. Oh gosh. Okay.
I'm calling you out when when you do extra work and think of a podcast topic, and I just want to let you know I really appreciate you, but also that was the weirdest way to ask me how I felt about birds.
Do you got any stories about birds, Nick?
Okay. I don't like that voice you just used. That voice you just used. Let's not use that one again. It's a mean voice. No, I don't. You leave it in, but don't use it again.
Yes, sir. I'm sorry. I apologize. I'll send you a letter in the mail. Okay.
I appreciate
it. So, Nick, a while back. So here's the thing. Actually, I don't think this is necessarily a thing that a lot of people do, and not a thing that I did really well. But one of my favorite things about this podcast is if I just think a question, I will just write it in a note on my phone, and maybe it's a thing I revisit, maybe it's a thing I never revisit. I assume that this is not a thing that normal people do, right?
That's what I do for this podcast. It's the same thing. I completely.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. Well, I've done a very bad job. Instead of making a keep note or something like that, I have been texting my wife topic names that she just ignores, and I try to search for later, but don't do a good job of.
Yeah. No, but so one of the things that I wrote down as a person who lives in the Midwest was like, what the frick is up with birds migrating? Like, I think is the exact thing I wrote.
Okay.
Like, I've never understood, like, there's many parts of that I don't really get. To me, the first and most obvious is, like, if you've ever witnessed birds migrating or flying as a group, they fly in a V shape. I assume you've witnessed this, Nick.
Quack, quack,
quack,
quack, quack, quack. No, you don't get it? Okay, yeah.
Nick and I have played a game that may have had bird stuff. We're not going to acknowledge it more than we already have.
That's a Mighty Ducks reference, dude. Come on.
Oh, frick, you're right. Oh, I thought you were just doing
Flying
game
V.
stuff.
You just think I'm a freaking weirdo. I get it.
I mean, it hasn't changed. But yes, so quack, 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 V shape, Mighty Ducks. Do you want to take a stab? Unlike when I just say, do you have any feelings about birds?
I don't have any idea why. I mean, is it like to create like the not a tailwind? What's the thing where like you can in the draft? Is it to create a draft? And like flying
it's like
a
flap down. I don't know what the right words are to actually say this, but when they flap down their wings, it creates like a little updraft after they flap it down. These are very good technical terms. But by doing that, it creates a little bit of an updraft on each side. So if you're flying diagonally from a bird in front of you, you get a little bit of updraft, so you have to work slightly less hard. And also, by doing it on the outside, you have a clear vision of what's in front of you. Whereas if you were like going
if they just
on
filled
the inside,
in like a triangle and like a filled in triangle,
they wouldn't be able to see, and they would like potentially hit something or whatever. So
Okay.
Like it's kind of it's just a naturally smart thing to do. It actually is what lots of like ships would do back in the day with warfare, and planes do for the exact same reason of having a clear line of sight, but being in formation. So but the main thing, at least as far as we know, is it is beneficial because you get a little updraft and you can see what is in front of you. So that's why they fly in a V.
That makes a lot of sense, and I'll say that seems like a raw deal for the dude at the front. Dude at the front's got to fly a long ways.
Yeah,
and carrying everybody else's weight with them.
I looked that up right afterwards because exactly the same thing. I was like, man, that seems like a little bit of a raw deal because everybody else except for them has a good run of it. I guess they rotate out the front, depending on what bird is, the front goose or the front bird or whatever. And there is like some science behind that. It seems like to be only a handful, like it's not just a random bird. But like as to exactly what that means or exactly what that, like who that person or who that bird may be, like there's not a lot of understanding exactly why that is. But there do seem to be a handful of front runner birds that like will rotate out that front roll. So yeah,
okay,
you're 100% right though. It is definitely the hardest. There have been studies done where they like monitor heart rate of birds, and everybody except for the front runner bird has a much lower heart rate compared to the front guy. So it's very
that's
interesting.
kind of cool. Although I gotta imagine, or not imagine, but like that's super interesting because like, do they actually communicate it, or is it just like an unspoken thing that they just like understand that they need to rotate?
So I'll get to that. Actually, I guess I'll just hop into that because that kind of gets into another part of what's always baffled me about birds migrating, which is what the flying frick, like how do they know when to go do their thing?
Yeah, and are they like completely sentient or not sentient? Whatever the word is,
how do they know just to freaking up in one day just go off and do something? Like it's absolutely buck wild to me. And there's lots of different thoughts on this, but again, it's kind of one of those things we don't really know the exact answer to. There is many studies that have gone on for lots of different areas where it definitely seems to be that they are much more sensitive to magnetic fields than we are, to the extent that they can see magnetic fields. My last point will be something that's kind of interesting about that. As far as like when it's time to go is kind of an unknown. But it's definitely tied to them wanting to ride when a very big cold front comes in. If you were a bird in the Midwest and a big cold front comes in, that's most likely going to be a airflow coming from the north to the south, which they can just ride on, which drastically reduces the amount of energy that they need to expend to go south. But
that makes sense.
So yeah, that makes sense. But how they know where to go, because they oftentimes go to the exact same places year after year. And even weirder than that, you see this behavior happening in isolated small groups of birds that migrate, that it's their first year going south. And they go to the exact same spot that their ancestors none of them have any connection to the exact same spot. So
that makes no sense. It makes no sense to me.
How? So Nick, I know I've done the Googling.
They literally went into the DNA code and just put it down in a little note in there, just a little side note, like, hey, by the way, you're gonna want to go to these coordinates. Like that makes no sense.
What you said is literally our best guess at this point, as far as I understand it. Is there is something, not necessarily that it would be genetically tied to a geographic region, but the geographic region lends itself to dispositions in their DNA to want to go to that particular area based on weather conditions, magnetic pole stuff. It gets kind of wild, Nick. There is no super good understanding as to exactly why that is the case. It's a very, very, very weird.
Yeah. That doesn't make it makes me have more questions. You know what I mean?
So, two more things that will make you have more questions. So, one thing that in doing this research that I found out is that, especially when migrating, birds do some weird things. One, the amount of energy that they have to use while they migrate, they lose 1% of their body weight per hour.
Yikes!
Which I want you to think about that in our perspective. That would be like us
2
losing
pounds an hour.
2 pounds an hour. Yeah, depending, give or take. But yeah, losing 2 pounds an hour.
Yikes.
Which I would be okay with that weight loss program. I'd be looking pretty good.
I might be looking real bad real fast, though. I mean, we start off great. First couple hours, fantastic, feeling good.
Yeah, I'll look pretty good by the afternoon and pretty bad by the evening. Yeah, sure.
Exactly.
So that's super weird. They counteract that by riding the wind flows from the north to the south on those fronts. But also they eat a frick ton before it gets time to migrate. So they counter that. That to me is super wild. But the most ridiculous thing about all of this is the biggest reason why scientists believe that birds are dependent upon magnetic fields is if you cover up a bird's left eye, it has very little impact on its ability to migrate. If you cover up a bird's right eye, it can't really migrate at all because it doesn't really know what direction is which. Meaning, and there's a lot of science behind this, Nick, and I'll skip this, but what the conclusion is from all this is birds can see magnetic fields, probably. Obviously, we haven't asked many of them, but they can probably see magnetic fields only in their right eye, which
bizarre.
There is, like, I can't even ask you, like, what do you think the reason for that is? Because there is no known reason. That is just a weird thing that is. And I guess this kind of concludes my bird weird, like, how do birds migrate segment, but what a freaking weird rabbit hole to go down.
I was gonna say that's a lot of weird stuff, and I know that there's a lot of evolutionary stuff that evolution isn't what people seem to think it is. That it's like a path to the most ideal being that you could be, or species that you could be, and there's a lot of weirdness in evolution where things are, people or animals or humans or whatever develop genes or develop things about them that are not ideal or are just kind of pointless sometimes, or not neither a negative or a positive. They just kind of are strange. But that is super bizarre. That is super out there. Like, just only be able to see magnetic fields in one eye. Like, what?
It's very weird. Okay, so and like I'm reading my notes and I don't even remember what I talked about. Nick, did I mention the part where they sleep when they fly?
What? How?
Okay, did I skip this part?
Those words, you did. Those words don't make sense, Jeffrey.
So that is the other thing. The one way they conserve energy. Yeah, this is what I meant to mention in the other part where I said they ride like the wave of the winds going south during a cold front. They sleep when they fly, which doesn't seem like that should be possible. They do it in an interesting way. They sleep one hemisphere of their brain at a time. So
what?
Like enough of them can stay awake to flap their wings and they can keep one eye open, but otherwise their other half is asleep and then they switch. Sometimes if there's a really big updraft, they will sleep at the same time and just ride an updraft.
That's terrifying.
But usually only for like a minute or two. But yeah, they alternate sides of their brain to sleep during the day while they fly when they're migrating. Is that not wild as frick?
That's insane. Jeff, I can't make my eyeballs go different directions.
Okay.
These guys narrow in on parts of their brain to turn off.
So dolphins do the same thing when they sleep, so they don't drown themselves. which I think is crazy, and then we can go into that. But Nick, the other thing that I think is quite interesting is there are certain scenarios where humans do the same thing. Would you believe me if I told you this?
I mean, I guess, but like I have to imagine it would be subconscious, right?
So what the scenarios that this happens is, and I don't remember the exact phrasing for it, but it is the thing that happens to you when you are going to sleep in a foreign place for the first time. And if you are any part of you is concerned about the surroundings that you're in, you're likely to only sleep one hemisphere at a time. And like the other part of your brain will be listening to sounds, and you may even also sleep with one eye open, similar to birds. It like is a very weird phenomena where if you are not comfortable, like if you don't feel safe in the place that you sleep, or honestly, if it's just a brand new area and you're just like not a very like easy sleeper, you very well may have this exact thing happen to you where you sleep one hemisphere at a time and you just wake up thinking you've had a really crappy sleep, but in reality,
is that
you were
a
trying
thing
to.
that people can train for? Where is that like the reality of people when they say that they sleep like really light, but I've seen people wake up at like the drop of a hat where they seem to have hardly been asleep at all. Is that what I'm basically seeing in that moment? Is somebody who's basically only having half of their brain asleep?
I don't know. Like, obviously, I'm no expert on this. I think it's like, at least from what I read, most of the science behind it is people sleeping in unfamiliar areas. Okay. So if you're doing that,
do you know if it's something that's trainable?
I don't know if that's trainable, so maybe that's some research that we could do.
No, totally. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot with this. I'm asking you this like you have a PhD in like neuroscience and like you know about how to turn off half your brain while you sleep, right?
No, but I thought all of that was very interesting because it is like a thing that I have found fascinating as to like how do birds even do this, and then to even have any amount of tie back to what we do on on any amount of basis, like the fact that perhaps there is some sort of link between the same sort of behavior that birds have with how they are able to sleep and fly at the same time, which doesn't seem possible, but also to us when we are in unfamiliar circumstances where we can have half a brain asleep and half be paying attention. The other part of the reason why they do that, by the way, Nick, is if you're migrating, you are very, very exhausted when you land. And so even when they're not flying, they will sleep with only one part of their brain asleep so that the other part of their brain can have one eye open and watch for predators and stuff.
That's insane.
Because they're just completely exhausted. Otherwise, they would just die because they would get eaten by everything.
I mean, yeah, that makes sense. And I mean, I also imagine that there's a level of safety in doing that in a pack, right? Or flock, right?
Sure, yeah.
Because there's going to be sounds and stuff from your flock. Because I'm sure they don't, unless they, I don't know. These guys are insane. They might have found a way to sync it up so that they're all sleeping with, you know what I mean? Or like the left side of the bee sleeps with the left side of their brain asleep. And oh my gosh.
But yeah, I thought that was kind of crazy. That's kind of cool. All right. Well, as we've mentioned throughout the show, we do have our Patreon-only podcast. If you would like to support us, you can check us out at patreon.com/TaiWasap. But like I will say a million times, every single time we do this podcast, the best thing that you can do is share it with a friend. We very much appreciate any of you that are listening. And if you'd be willing to share it with a friend, we appreciate you even more. You can check us out on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, blah, 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 et cetera, at TaiWasap, but not on Snapchat. Anyways, Nick, I appreciate you taking the time to pod with me.
You're welcome. This has been the year restart of the podcast. Thank you for listening.